You're way too beautiful, girl. That's why it'll never work. You'll have me suicidal, suicidal when you say it's over. Damn all these beautiful girls. They only wanna do you dirt. They'll have you suicidal, suicidal when they say it's over. What up, people? So this is my veteran suicide awareness thing once again. So if you are having some kind of issue, you need to call me, you need to call EMS, you need to call the VA, or you need to call Army One Source if you are having some kind of a problem. And we do this because, it's a challenge, it's a thing, it's push-ups, it keeps you in shape. Why not? Anyway, today I have two things that I want to talk about, and I don't know if I'm going to get to it all because I have addendums from from the last thing that I did, and I'm supposed to talk about suicide awareness, but before I do that, I have like a few addendums on the video I did on oppression. So let me get right into it. I said on the last video that slavery was over, and that is incorrect. Slavery is still going on in several places in the world, and even here in North America. There are 18 million slaves in India. There are 2.3 million in China. So all of those things. Somebody just messing me while I'm doing this. That's why I slow down. So yeah, there's still slaves. There's still slaves in America. I just had to clear that off. Okay. So yeah, there are still slaves, and people don't seem to recognize this. Like all that stuff that you get from India and China, you're always seeing things that say made in China, made in India, made in Pakistan. That's what that's about. There are still slaves in the world, and people don't realize it. They just take it for granted, and they think that just because somebody like does something ill to them or roll their eyes at them here in America, that's oppression. It's not. No, you have no idea. Also, a thing that we don't talk about enough is human trafficking. That's when somebody is snatched away from their home and then taken to a place where they don't speak the language and they are forced into slavery because they don't know their situation, they don't know their surroundings, and they don't know the language. This happens a lot more than you might think, specifically here in America. Those mail order brides, certain brothels that'll have somebody chained to the bed from a foreign place who doesn't speak the language. Yeah, stuff like that. That's why they're always telling soldiers to stay away from brothels, because you never know if you might be engaging in something like that. Anyway, West African slavery is still a thing, and a lot of people don't like to talk about this because transatlantic slave trade. There were three legs to transatlantic slave trade. The first leg was from Britain to West Africa. There's a small island off the coast of West Africa called Cape Verde, and that's where they operated out of. So Africans enslaved other Africans, and everybody was doing slavery back then. Let's get that out there. Pretty much everybody was doing slavery. Africans, they traded slaves because that was the valuable goods that they had. They would conquer people from another tribe next door to them who they had a conflict with, and then the people who weren't killed were then sold into slavery because that was their trade. That was them trading goods to the Europeans. The Europeans from there would take those slaves out of Cape Verde to the Caribbean, like Barbados, those areas, and drop them off at sugar plantations because that's where the majority of slaves would end up being. And then from there, they take a few up to the colonies in North America. They would trade them there for weapons, goods, spices, and then from there, they go back to Great Britain and they check out and cash in. And then the whole thing would start all over again. That's how transatlantic slave trade worked. Now, a much maligned point that people don't like to talk about is that the Europeans and Americans actually ended slavery. You see, everybody was into slavery, and slavery's still going on today. But it was the Europeans and the Americans who said, you know what, morally speaking, this is reprehensible. Now, slavery has always been morally reprehensible, but it was still a moral step up. And that's what a lot of folks don't get. Like, let's put it in perspective. In the ancient world, everything was a shakedown. If an army came up to your gates, you give them some of your stuff. Kind of like Negan On The Walking Dead, it's like, give me your shit or I'm gonna fucking kill you. So that's what they would do. They would pay money to these various groups who would threaten to attack their city where they're just trying to live in peace if they didn't have the ability to protect themselves. And if for whatever reason you could not pay, they would roll into your city, they would kill the men and children, they would rape the women, and that was the story. And then your city would act as an example to every other city that they wanted to shake down. So yeah, it was just a protection racket. So slavery, deciding that, okay, we're not going to kill everybody. Whoever's left alive, we will take them as slaves and they will just live forever as property. That was, morally speaking, a step up from just slaughtering, from the wholesale slaughter of everyone. And that's why everybody was doing slavery, because the world was actually progressively moving forward. It's crazy to say, but in that perspective, slavery was progressive. Now, the next step was ending slavery, and that's a step that some people still haven't taken, but America and the Europeans did. So the next time you want to get angry about it, just, keep that in mind. Also, the reason I talked about transatlantic slave trade is because I want you to understand that it was a business. It wasn't about racial supremacy. It was about money. Like, most of the things that happen in the world, they're about money. Now, white supremacy and racism, that came after the fact as a means of maintaining a position that had been acquired. But initially, it was entirely about money. Yeah, okay. Those are all the things I want to cover. Now, suicide. Suicide is old. Like an example of an ancient ritual suicide is seppuku. This is something that the samurai would do whenever they felt they had been dishonored. Yes, they would take a knife, they would stab themselves in the stomach, and then they would carve it, just curve, spilling their guts onto the floor. And then they'd bleed out pretty fast and die pretty fast, but still, it was gruesome and dirty and nasty and left a big mess. But that was a ritualistic suicide. And samurai who believed they had been dishonored did this to regain their honor. So in that sense, suicide was an apology, go figure. Now, some common ways that people choose to kill themselves. There's the shotgun to the head. Men seem to prefer that one. There's the gun to the temple. Men also seem to prefer that one. Be careful with that one, though. It tends to... If you miss, you might live, and then you'll be fucked up. What else? There's hanging yourself. That's where you create a noose, tie it to something taller than you, step up onto something like a stool or a chair, and then kick the chair out from under you. And at that point, gravity takes over, and you have no choice. After you've placed the noose around your neck, slip knot, so it cinches down. And then there's carbon monoxide. That's where you sit in the garage, you attach a tube to your tailpipe, and then you run that tube into your car. And what happens is the carbon monoxide actually kicks the oxygen off of your hemoglobin. You pass out, and you never wake up because you deoxygenate. And you just suffocate slowly and quietly and peacefully. So those are some common ways that people kill themselves. Now, the thing is, if somebody wants to kill themselves, you can't really stop them. Unless you just happen to be at the right place at the right time and you could tackle them before they dash off a bridge. You can't really stop somebody who has determined that they want to kill themselves. All you can really do is talk to them. If they want to kill themselves, they want to kill themselves. If they don't want to, they don't want to. The only people you can actually help are people who are the only people you can actually help are people that are sort of looking for attention or people who aren't really serious about it. And that's actually not your fault. You should not be weighed down by the notion that you can't do something for somebody, because everybody's responsible for their own actions, their own choices in their own life. And suicide is a personal choice. Suicide is you saying that I can't deal with this and I need to check out. And there isn't too much you can do for somebody who's like that, except try to show them that there are good things in the world and they don't need to check out. Because, like I said, life here in America is pretty fucking good for pretty much everybody. Some people struggle more than others, but on a scale, if you compare what we go through here to what other people go through there, Uh-uh. There's not, most times there is no comparison. Mm. Okay, so some signs and symptoms, some signs of suicide. Depression. If somebody's really, really down, always talking about how the world could do without them. If they start giving their stuff away, like if they have prized possessions, like some people have these favorite things that they just hang on to. Like I've gotten very attached to these hats. It's because I earned them. I was on Toy Drop. I plan on going again this year. If they have a plan. Usually, if people have a plan, that means they've been thinking about it. So they've been working themselves up to a point of actually doing it. And then if they're really depressed and down, and then all of a sudden they just hop up and they're suddenly relieved, like everything's good, and then they start giving a bunch of their stuff away, yeah, they might be at a risk. Now, now treatment for suicide, generally all I can really do for someone who's suicidal is you can talk to them. Beyond that, there ain't too much. They can lock you in a padded room. They can lobotomize you. But is your life really going to be better like that? I don't think so. So, treatment varies. It usually involves like being supportive and being real with people. Like, you can't bullshit folks, You can't bullshit them. That's why I am the way I am. That's why I say things the way I say things, because you can't you can't bullshit people constantly. You can't lie to them. I'm very anti bullshit. I feel that there's been a lot of bullshit going around lately, so instead of just instead of congratulating these people and all this crazy ideas, I hit them with reality. And then if they don't want to accept it, if they want to go into their own little delusion, oh well, whatever. Maybe they'll snap out of it someday. But I myself do not have to condone it or congratulate it. Because I feel that these people who I've been talking about lately, these blacktivists, these feminists, these people who talk about Islam like it's a race or something, I feel that some of these people have actually been encouraging other people to commit suicide. And I think they contribute to it because they present this idea of what life is like that is completely exaggerated and is completely inaccurate. And that is why I do bullshit control. That is why I come right out and I tell you, okay, these are the facts. This is how it is. This is why this is going down. Because I want you to understand that the world is a very concrete place. Like, I understand that a lot of you believe in God. I understand that you believe in like spirituality and karma and all of these other things, that you feel that like some ether is floating around that affects things. But I need you to understand that things happen for real reasons. If you're dying, it's because something really did go wrong in your body. If you're dead, it's because you killed yourself, or because someone else killed you, or because something went wrong in your body. It's not because of some magical whatever that just said, oh, it's your time to die. No, that is not how it works. That's not how slavery works. That's not how suicide works. We are all responsible for our own actions, and we all make our own choices. That cannot be overemphasized. So if you choose to commit suicide, it's because you chose to commit suicide. Nobody else needs to feel guilty about that. But don't commit suicide, especially not if you live in America. Life is pretty good. And if it's not, there's a pretty good chance it's going to get better later. So anyway, on to the main show. Oh, one other thing. I always like to say this. Valamogulis, Valadahiris. All men must die, all men must serve. A shout out to Rackwell Pomplin, and I nominate Keith Gray. Tag, you're it.